Welcome to Keeping It Real podcast, where we talk about real estate and talk to some of the most interesting people in real estate. And today is going to be one I'm super excited about. You are catching us live right now if you're watching us in the Real Geeks Mastermind group or on YouTube. So if you're there, you can say hi in the chat, write us questions at any time. We're going to do our best to take those questions and answer them. So definitely feel free to participate. Otherwise, we'll catch you after if you're catching this after the fact. I'm going to introduce our guest today, Dale Archdekin, who's got an awesome name. And Dale, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Dale Archdekin. I'm the founder of Smart Coaching and Training, otherwise known as Smart Inside Sales. That's how we first got started. And we are a script and dialogue training company for real estate agents and ISAs across North America. That's what we do.
Excellent. And you and your wife have both been in real estate for like an extremely long time, right?
Yeah. So I think my wife started selling in 2007. I started selling in 2008 and I was in mortgages for a few years prior to that. So we've definitely been in the industry for a while. And in fact, even started investing in real estate back in like 2006 or 2005 or something like that. So we've been around, I've sold a lot of real estate, sold through crazy markets. My wife has consistently been a real estate agent and is an agent on one of the biggest teams the biggest team in Southeast Pennsylvania region. And I transitioned a while ago. So I sold for a while. Then I partnered up with another team in my office and we grew that to a top 5 Keller Williams mega team. And then in 2016, I went full time, taking all the tools and resources that I had built to build and manage inside sales departments and optimize our sales team. And I made a coaching and training company that centers around scripting and dialogue, lead conversion, and sales team optimization.
Awesome. Excellent. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to talk to you mostly today about role play, but was it last week at this point? Yeah. We were both at FubCon, Follow Up Boss Conference, and you gave an excellent talk on the main stage that I wanted to dig in a little bit. And one of the things that I really perked up when you were talking about it was you were talking about resulting and training your sales reps to take actions based on best practices and not based off like kind of the last good vibe they got, essentially. And so I don't know if I'm translating that correctly, but why don't you take it away and kind of like replay some of that, because I thought it was excellent foundational knowledge.
Yeah, sure. So it's a concept that I learned about recently in a book that I read called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. And she's a professional poker player. And she was talking about, and she's also a scientist by training, which is interesting. So she is very interested in how poker works, how the professionals and players operate in it. And what she said in there was, as she was describing how poker is a nonlinear game versus something like chess that has very specific bespoke moves and sequences, poker, on the other hand, has several variables that you can't control. And I was just listening to this book and I'm like, wow, this is so much like sales, right? So sales is, has so many variables that you can't control also. And so as I'm listening, she then talked about this one key principle that she was taught by her poker mentors, which is to avoid resulting. And because in poker, you're following best practices and you're supposed to follow the best practices. They don't always work, but they usually work, right? They're the best practices. Right. That's what you should do. And one of the difficulties that young poker players run into as they start resulting, which is to say that you have a bias toward taking whatever the most instant results or most recent results are that you got and trying to change your methodology. So second guessing your best practice method when it doesn't work, and then changing and doing something that is not best practices because you're focused on that most recent loss that you took, right? Or that most recent time that what you did didn't work. And so when I gave my talk, and it was all about the patterns that my company and I developed to teach salespeople the best practices for conducting a conversation with a lead especially when, we want them to do something within a certain time period with certain people under certain circumstances. That's not always what they want. And especially when you run into objections, we teach a really solid methodology for unpacking objections and getting on the same side of the table with someone to understand them, and then basically trying to package up and sell back to them what they're looking for, but get them to consider doing it in a different time frame with a different person, whatever it is. So we have these patterns that we teach. And I started off by talking about the pitfalls of resulting, because I know from a lot of years of experience of teaching and leading salespeople and being one myself, that when you're in the moment, man, you're like, oh my God, I don't want to lose this. Let me try this instead, or maybe I can pivot this way, instead of just focusing on using a best practice pattern and executing it each time, but taking the pattern and fitting it to whoever you're talking to or interacting with in the moment, but don't change it drastically because you are upset about that last appointment you didn't get, or the one that just didn't work out. So that's something that I thought I wanted to bring to everybody, because team leaders are sales managers, they're sales trainers. There might have been sales trainers in the room, or, at the very least, there were a lot of salespeople in the room that can hear this information. And I know that it's hard to stay the course, when you're in the heat of battle.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So I feel like I have some follow-on questions here. And one of them is, and I'll see if I can like put a couple pieces of knowledge together. I think one of them is like, well, when should you go off script? Because I think, I feel like it's not always great practice, just like read your script, right? And so that's not, it doesn't feel like that's what you're saying. I feel like this knowledge nugget also fits with like my definition of what an expert is. An expert is someone that is looking at basically the same data as the novice, but interpreting a lot more out of it. Right. And so is it the novice poker player or salesperson should stick to the best practices, or the expert should do that as well? Or is the expert just seeing so much more nuance in the conversation that they know when to pivot and move?
Yeah, what we do when we create these patterns, so we don't really write scripts in my company. About the most thing that is scripted would be the intro, or your value proposition for your company. But in the middle is a big gray area. And so we just create patterns for those. So we look at what the experts do, what the highest selling salespeople do, the most experienced ones, and we distill that down into a workflow that we can teach to anybody. And where a lot of this came from is by needing to on-ramp ISAs really fast. So how do you take somebody with either zero or very little sales experience or very little real estate experience and ramp them up quickly? You look at the way that really experienced salespeople, good ones, because there are a lot of experienced salespeople who do it poorly. But if you look at the really good ones, the ones who have a high win rate, the ones who build a lot of rapport, that get a lot of appointments, you'll find commonalities and similarities by how they make decisions in a conversation and what they're trying to do. Plus, we take some psychology into account there. One of my favorite books is not Think and Grow Rich. It's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Classic.
If you read that book, it's so simplistic. People care about themselves ultimately. And if you show that you care about them too, they will like you better. Like that's very basic concept right there. Right. And so, when you go through our training, you'll hear us oftentimes, or you heard me from stage. It's right. It's like, don't try to change somebody's mind until you understand them. Yeah. In order to understand them, you have to ask them questions and be genuine about trying to understand them. Yes. When you ask good questions and you genuinely want to understand someone, they think you care about them, right? Which is back to that book. They think you care about them, or you do. You either do, or you're really good at pretending it. But either way, you end up with the same result, which is they like you better. And so if somebody likes you better and they explain to you how they think and why they're doing something or not doing it, or when they're going to do it or not do it, or who they're going to do it with or not do it, it's so much easier for you to then say, oh, got it. Okay, now I understand why you're trying to get or avoid that thing. Well, hey, what if we did it in this way or at this time or with this person? and still got you what you wanted, and maybe more, better, cheaper, faster, easier too. This is what we teach. Like, I don't need a script for that.
Right.
That's a methodology that you can teach anyone.
Right. So it's almost more like having a flow chart in your mind of like a path to follow versus having a rote script that,
Right.
like, if we're honest, this script is not going to enable you to like really do discovery and build empathy.
Right. Yeah. We do have some things that we script out a little bit more, and we kind of use them as training wheels until somebody gets really practiced at it. So for instance, I have an agent script. So we use it in the instance where someone says that they have another agent or agency or brokerage that they're planning on using, or that they're currently talking to or interacting with, or whatever it may be, whatever flavor of that it is. We have a pattern that we teach, and it's 4 steps that we teach to it so people can remember it. We paraphrase, oh, you have an agent, and we wait to get free information. Are you committed to that agent? Have you signed with that agent? What's the benefit to working with that agent?
Right.
So that's a 4-step process, and you could think of it as a script. I would say that within there, the only thing that we're pretty specific about is the one that asks, are you committed to that agent? And we deliver it in that way because it has a real impact and it tends to shake people up. Other than that, it's just a pattern that you're learning so that you can weave the process into the conversation that you're having. And when we explain to people what the methodology is of getting through that, and we just practice it a few times, then they can just execute it in real life. And nobody knows they're operating from a set of principles.
Right. Right. It feels natural. It's like it's like a dance move or something like that, okay, this goes here and it gets dragged and dropped in,
right,
and flows naturally.
It's like a dance move. Not that I am a dancer by any stretch of the imagination, but I do understand that, within dance moves, you've got a certain series of steps that you're going to take, and you can weave them in if you're any good at dancing, unlike myself.
Yeah, no, I was trying to figure out what the appropriate cultural reference was going to be there. Like, was it going to be like a jujitsu move or something like that? Maybe that's more, I don't know, better for the target audience. I'm not sure. We'll see later in the stats.
Something like that. Exactly. Something that you can intuit once you learn it. It'll be clunky at first. Once you intuit it, then you just slide it in there and you execute it. And if you follow that pattern will more often than not produce a good result for you over really any other way that you could have approached it.
Right, exactly. And I'm feeling like a lot of this is very similar to athletics in the sense that you want to make the baseline skill set so proficiently and unconsciously executed that you can kind of reserve your mental compute power for really understanding the person that you're talking to.
Yeah. When you learn these sort of techniques and you embed them, then you can really be present with the person. You aren't thinking about what you're going to say next. You don't have to. You can flow with them so much better.
Right. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's pivot into kind of our main topic here. So we, have the title of this thing as, the importance of role play. And that's something that I've witnessed you do in our mastermind group, and it is really fun to listen to. I might have to jump in and participate because I was like, cheering / yelling at my computer, as I was listening to our mastermind group participants. Flow with you.
Isn't it funny? Like, some people like you definitely have the crowd anticipation, like, oh man, are they going to get it? Can they do it? Like, oh, he did it once, they got corrected. Can he get it next? Yay, they win. And then sometimes there are people where you just have to be like, okay, this time I just want you to say the words I say it back. Like sometimes you just have to hold them down and be like, wait, say these exact words. So that I can get that brain to brain connection so they stop trying to rewrite it in their head.
Do you think people are more apprehensive about role play than actually going out and talking to live customers?
Great question. It really spans the gamut, I would say. There are people who are excellent role players and really get nerves all bound up when they're talking to
Yeah.
someone in real life and they just don't execute anything they were supposed to. Then there's people who are petrified of a structured role play, but in real life, they'll just shoot from the hip and get where they need to go. And they feel more comfortable that way because they can be free flowing with it.
Yep.
So it's really all over the place. And then there's some people that honestly role play just doesn't work for them because they don't, their brain doesn't work that way. I mean, I feel like I've run into that a few times.
They maybe can't suspend the disbelief and really engage.
Yeah, it's like they can't have that abstract vision in their head. It doesn't work for them that way.
Yep.
And, you know, a lot of I've been doing this for many years and doing it in front of people and doing it on stage. And so now I have a big capacity for acting. I just have a big capacity for the abstract. You know, not that I'm like Mr. Jazz Hands or anything, but what I mean is I can put myself quickly into an imagined scenario and in some narrow band play different characters. And that doesn't work. Not everybody's practiced in that way.
Right. Definitely. Okay. Let's zoom way out. So we were talking a little bit about like the curriculum elements in your program and then role play. So, I mean, for someone that can't imagine what we're talking about, like, you want to just give us an overview of what exactly we're talking about here?
Yeah. We're talking about lead conversion. We're talking about having sales conversations with potential buyers and sellers of real estate. And we're talking about how do you get into we're talking about role playing, practicing best practices for getting into a conversation with a lead, a referral, and conducting discovery with them, and then objection handling them if they aren't going to do what you want them to do when you want them to do it. And then being able to articulate your value proposition. If somebody said, why should I buy or sell a home with you? It's the ability to articulate that in a logical way, and then set up a logical next step for either a, you know, phone call, a Zoom meeting, a face-to-face, a listing appointment, a showing. Those are all the things that we practice and we role play those because salespeople need that experience. They just need they need the guidance, they need the help, they need the reinforcement and the practice. And if you do that, you know, if you're a solo, you probably know you need to know what you're saying and you want to feel more comfortable at it. If you're a team leader, we tend to forget the fact that our agents aren't having sales conversations as many as we want them to because they either don't know what to say or they're afraid of the outcome because they're ill prepared.
Right. So it's essentially substituting reps where reps are needed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So how often should agents be role playing?
That's a good question. So when I was in production, I lead generated 6 days a week, every week. So I would role play before I lead generated most of the time. Once I got into, you know, a few years into doing it every day, every week, you know, I didn't feel like I needed to practice anymore. It's like I didn't really need to warm up. But you know, if the listeners here are like most agents, they probably aren't doing this stuff every day. They may do it a couple times a week at best. So then they should really at least role play before they start having conversations, before they start making calls, just in case they get that voice-to-voice connection and they're ready for it. And if you're newer to this, I'd say be doing it every day. Not that I'm trying to plug us shamelessly in any way, but within my company,
but there is definitely going to be links down below. So
okay. Definitely links down below. And Sean just gave me the chat plug away. We have just started the Players Club is what we call it because it's cooler than Role Players Club, right? Yeah. Come to the Players Club. So we've just started the Players Club for our clients, where it's just a Slack channel where our clients can coordinate for role playing with each other. Who was it? Somebody in my company was like, so you don't have to cruise the internet and look for strangers, right? It was just like a creepy, like dating app reference, I guess. So we have the Players Club that we've just started up for clients in our company. It's a Slack channel, they can coordinate. And then what we maintain inside our company is called the prospecting room. And all the prospecting room is it's going on right now. It's an open Zoom meeting for our clients that's moderated. So you can pop in there at any time. You can coordinate in the Slack channel, find somebody who'll role play with you, go jump into the prospecting room, go into a breakout room, do your role play, get warmed up, and then come back out into the main prospecting room, and you turn your sound off, keep your video on so that you can see others and others can see you. And
Yep.
you just start lead generating, right? And you're in a space among other people. So these days, with so much work from home and virtual and people not in the office, back in the day when I was lead generating, doing this every day, we had a real prospecting room with the stand-up desks, you know, and the phones in them. And I would go in there to do my prospecting. And it was always nice when I had other people in there and I wasn't alone. You know, some days I was by myself, but it gets really lonely when you're lead generating, and it's nice to know that other people are doing it too. So I'm not just here to talk about doing this stuff. We actually support it in my company.
That's really awesome. Yeah, you're reminding me of, like, I've been my entire career in marketing, but I still love sitting with the sales team and listening to those conversations because you learn so much.
Yeah, a good sales team is really fun to listen to because they're just good at what they do.
Right, exactly. Okay, so if someone's going to, maybe I have a question here that's like, what are some tips to keep in mind when role playing? But maybe we should like segment that question out, because you talked about a couple of different scenarios. You talked about, role playing as a warm up for the day, as well as role playing for, to maybe grow some new skills. And so maybe I'll let you pick, like, which side do we want to attack first, and then kind of like drill into some things to be thinking about when you're working on that.
Yeah, sure. So we'll start from the learning new skills side. So we teach, what we'll do is we'll do a lesson. We explain what the purpose of it is. We explain the parameters of it. Typically, we explain the scenario that you would use it in, and then we practice getting through the steps. Doing that with a skilled trainer is hugely impactful because they can stop and correct you and change what you're doing and help you integrate this concept and this process within you. And then we even get into listening to call reviews. So we'll have salespeople record themselves, hopefully in their CRM or even an app on their phone, just to get a sample. This is what my coaches did for me when I was in production, when I was learning. They didn't do any role play. They just gave us the scripts and told us to role play amongst each other. We don't do that kind of stuff in my company. We actually teach you the concepts because we don't have written scripts. You don't need them. But if we're going to teach you to dance, we're going to teach you dance moves, or we're going to teach you jujitsu. I'm not going to do it from a book or a handout. You can't
hands-on education. So it's sort of like a walk, crawl, run type thing where it's like, we're going to teach you how to do it. We're going to role play in a group, and then we're going to release you into the wild, but then we're going to come back and we're going to review how those went.
Yeah, exactly. And then when we say like Players Club, you should role play and practice, basically you're practicing our techniques and strategies. Ours are not the only ones. What I would say here though is we often will say to people, hey, we're another set of tools, another set of verbal dialogue tools that you can use, that you can have in your bag and pull out when you need to. But honestly, as long as you aren't following any scripting that immediately makes someone wrong or closes into the face of their objection, or disregards their perspective, then go with it. But I would say that those three examples I just gave are examples of old school thinking, like 1960s door-to-door salesman.
Give me some examples, because you highlighted some there. It was really good. So it's like you make them wrong. So basically, like, directly contradicting.
Right. So Chris, if you said, hey, yeah, thanks Dale for calling, but we won't be buying a home until probably next fall. And I said, well, Chris, right now prices are great and we have no idea where interest rates are going to go. So you should consider purchasing now. Right. I mean, that's all great information, dude, but I just hit you right into the face of your objection. A strange salesperson with no rapport, no like and trust, no like and trust. And I just made you wrong and tried to close you into the face of your objection. Like in two swipes right there, I did the wrong thing. Where you said, hey, Dale, you know what? That's fantastic, man. I'm going to try to sell my home on my own for maybe a couple of months. And I said, and if I, as a old school salesperson, was like, Chris, that's a terrible thing to do, man. You shouldn't take the risk. You're putting your family in jeopardy doing something like that. Just So you should work with a professional. That's just making you wrong. You know,
Right.
you're not ready to hear that stuff.
Right. Depending on the personality type, the response could actually be aggression, not,
Right.
a progress forward in the pipeline or in the
Yeah.
funnel. Yeah.
Exactly. Or, hey, Dale, we're not ready to put our home on the market for a couple of months because X, Y, or Z. Oh, got it, Chris. Well, listen, I could come by, check out your home, tell you what it'll sell for, and talk you through the process. Dude, I just told you I'm not ready for any of that stuff. That doesn't make any sense. So, not having making illogical closes, closing too fast, closing into the face of an objection. And then there's nuanced things. Like I was just working with a client the other day. He's talking to leads. He calls this guy up. I guess he had it was like a nurture. It's like, hey man, wanted to see if you're ready to get out there and start looking at houses. Guy's like, oh man, it's going to be a little while. I got my second child on the way any day now. And he goes, okay, man. So when do you think you want to be moved into your next house? And I was like, you just stepped over that guy's newborn baby like it was a speed bump in your way.
Right.
Like, slow down, man. What are you doing? You missed a massive rapport opportunity. Guy is not buying a house today.
Not to mention one of the biggest, what do they call them? Like the 5Ds, diapers being one of them. Like,
right.
Hello.
And this is a really good salesperson. I mean, he's going to close the year at 45 units for himself on a team. And, even him, like if I wasn't there to listen with him and him listen to his call with me, he didn't know it. He just ran right over it. Right. And that's when you're like, whoa, slow down.
Okay. So this, I think, is a good transition to that second side. Because I think that I've got a path for where I want to take this conversation. But first, Jared Jones on YouTube is saying scripts. I don't need no stinking scripts. So
right.
I think we agree with you.
Save your scripts.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So day to day, you talked about role play as warm up. Like what should people be thinking in that scenario?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that we do for role play. Real simple that people can do in between themselves. Obviously the stuff that our trainers do is much more in depth and structured and all that. But for our students, one great thing that we practice to get warmed up is getting punched in the face, as we call it. So essentially getting pushed off the phone. Right. So Chris, if I were playing the role of an agent and you were playing the role of a lead who didn't want to be on the phone with me, who had to do something, but you can't tell me whether or not you're going to buy or sell a house in the near future. You can't say that. You can't give me any inclination, but you have to push me off the phone and tell me you have to go at least 3 times. Right. So that would be a role play that I would do.
Yeah.
Do you want to do that now?
I can give it a shot. I mean,
that'd be weird.
I do this a lot to people.
I don't know if you could be tough.
Well, usually my stock answer is I'm in a meeting. Goodbye.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's try it. Let's just for the fun of it. Are we live? Can we cut this out if it sucks later on?
No, we're going. We're going. I got some ideas. All right. We're live. Yeah.
So I have to ask you if you're buying a house in the near future 3 times. You can't, you have to avoid the question 3 times. Okay. You can't give me a yes or no, or even a maybe. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So ring, Chris.
Hello, this is Chris.
Hello, Chris. This is Dale Archdekin with Whatever Realty.
Hey, Dale, I'm kind of in a meeting right now. Is this important?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I just want to see if you're planning on buying a home in the near future or not.
No, I haven't really been thinking about it.
Oh, got it. Okay. Well, you registered on my site to look at homes for sale. Do you live in the area currently, or are you moving in?
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking about moving in, but again, I got to go.
Oh, hey, listen, man, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just want to find out if you're planning on buying or not, because I don't want to keep bugging you.
Yeah, I think in the future I'm planning on buying.
Okay, great. There we go. I think that was 2 questions in that you gave it to me. So in the role play,
did we do something else that I think on FubCon you said that most role plays end in like success rather than failure. And so I probably should have said, no, I'm never going to buy.
Okay, you totally can. I would have had you push. I would have had you withhold it one more time and make me come up with another way to stay in the conversation with you. But you see how tense that role play was, how quick that role play was. Like that will get your energy flowing. If you're punching somebody in the face, it's not for me to practice a script. It's not for me to practice a process. It's to that's warm up, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's doing some burpees to get it fired up. And that's one really good structured role play that people should do before they get on the phone.
Yes. Okay. I love that. So, all right, they do the warm up, they get punched in the face a few times, and then it's time to get on the calls. You're a proponent of recording everything.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Recording everything. If you can't record everything, at least record some stuff.
Yep.
Because, we are expert trainers. We do a great job. But honestly, when we talk to a client and a client's considering hiring us for training, if they don't record, we strongly suggest that they record, because we know that the impact we can have is limited to doing that fake role play with their salespeople. And their salespeople can be amazing at role play, do it really well, and then completely shit the bed when they actually talk to people. And you don't hear that until you get to the recording part. And so many times they forget their training and it just like goes right out of their head. We just played. So I have a podcast called Cash Call where we actually play live recordings and we coach to them. And we just played one yesterday on Cash Call. It is of one of our clients. And you can hear how over time that we've worked with them, training, scripting, and then reviewing, he's now at the point where he stuck the intro. He stuck the initial objections. He was doing awesome. He was doing a good job at trying to unpack this person who really wasn't talking much. And now we're at a much higher level where we can coach him. And in that call, the feedback was that he needed to be more on the personal side with this person to try to crack it open and not sounding so much like a salesperson. And that's an oversimplification. But my point is that he stayed in the vein of his discovery questions, but didn't go off into, oh, hey, what neighborhood do you live in? I live in this neighborhood. I've been here for like 6 years. I love it. Only problem is there's roaming packs of deer that eat everything. What about you? How's your neighborhood? Right? Like into the personal, he can get into the personal side. And that's the next level for him to go to.
Right. So it's right, because in the role play, it's like you can have like the perfect counter player that is just going to like mirror the moves. And so it's not until you get into real life and people don't react the way that you expect them to, then you need to do the debrief.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we'll go back to the I have an agent example. When we role play, it's pretty formulaic. Oh, hey man, I have an agent, thanks. Or I have somebody I'm going to work with, thanks. In the real world, it might sound like, yeah, thanks, man. But do you know so-and-so? No, I don't. Okay, yeah, I see their billboards everywhere. I was thinking about giving them a call. Like that's one of a quadrillion variations of how that comes out. And you need to know, oh, it's go time for I have an agent. Let's do this,
Right. When you're starting off doing role play with people, do you have a hard time getting them to like maintain the scenario all the way through to completion? Or like, because I kind of felt like listening to some of the ones in the mastermind group, people would want to like, they'd hit a speed bump and they'd drop and they'd be like, okay, cut.
Well, I'll tell you this is one tip that I learned. And we used to do like role play all the way through a scenario, from the entry of the conversation through discovery, some kind of objection, all the way to closing. That is way too lengthy. And you can't get enough effective work done in that space. And so typically what we'll do is when we start working with clients, we perfect their intros. We perfect some initial objections. We perfect some bigger objections. We listen to their recordings to make sure they're getting the discovery pieces in there and they know what questions to ask. And then we'll practice value statements. We'll practice closes. We do these things in segments. We do them sort of in vignettes, if you will. And that's a much more effective way to do role play.
Right.
So when when you hear me do the training in the mastermind, I have a pre-formatted topic. It's like, okay, we're going to work on waiting for the market to crash. This is it. This is what the pattern is. I'm going to say it. You follow the pattern. And then once I see that you can follow the pattern, then we'll start to iterate or make it more complicated or add in some other element. So it's just like teaching.
Yeah. Okay. So you brought it up, waiting for the market to crash. How much do people work on like the basics of like sustaining a conversation, just getting past the like, no, I can't talk right now, versus like, topical specific objections, like I think the market's crashing, or the interest rates suck, or that whatever's the moment, like home prices are too expensive, I'm not going to buy during the bull market.
Yeah. So, well, one of the underlying concepts that we teach in my company is now, sooner, or logical next step. That is the underlying guiding principle. I want to sell you a house now, Chris, or I want you to sell your house now, Chris. And if that can't happen, I want to do it sooner. And if it can't be sooner, then I'm going to create a good logical next step with you. That is like a foundational concept for every sales person that we work with. Just by saying that, it guides what your intention is. It guides how you conduct a conversation. On top of that, what we layer is then the structure for something like waiting for the market to crash, waiting for interest rates to come down. Right. And that pattern is, one, we're going to understand you and your knowledge and your experience. And then we're going to educate you, soft close you to see if we can get you to change. And if not, then we move to the logical next step with you. So giving somebody that pattern on top of, can we do it now? Can we do it sooner? Neither of those, you notice where they came together at the end, which was logical next step. This is how we teach salespeople to conduct a conversation. And then
so
everything
it's basically like saying the game doesn't change, even if the stadium's changing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So this is, once you have those guiding principles, you know where you're at in a conversation, you get back to where you should be in a conversation, and you can take a stroll down, side story lane or whatever it is, but you always come back to the center, which is, will you buy or sell a house now, sooner, or do I create a logical next step with you?
Nice. Trying to figure out how to phrase this exactly, but it's basically, the question is like, how, when someone encounters a new objection, should they immediately go to their role-playing mastermind group and say like, let's do this, especially if they feel like it's coming? So this is kind of circling back on like, okay, the market's shifting, like interest rates are going up, homes are sitting longer, like how it seems like you wouldn't want to stumble over one of those objections 2 or 3 times before you brought it to your group to practice.
If you're following what we do,
yeah,
then you aren't going to tell anything. You're going to ask. And we have a game that we play called the question game, where we teach people to ask questions. And the rules of the question game are, Chris, I'm going to read you an objection, and you have to ask me a question, a direct question, to understand the objection. And we just do that in a microcosm, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So here's what I would say. If you run into a new objection, if you've been trained by us, you already know that you should be asking questions rather than stating anything. And if you haven't been trained by us, you should get trained by us, and you should be asking questions instead of trying to say anything.
Got it. I'm like feeling more and more this is like tools for life, not just sales. Because I'm thinking about the number of times where someone's like, it's like you're at a restaurant and they're like, oh, we don't have any tables, and it's like, I've watched, this is when it's nice to be traveling with your sales team, and they start like doing their sales thing and, making progress, where the rest of us mere mortals were like, oh.
Yeah. What's funny is I would go to the Chris Voss training, Chris Voss, the Never Split the Difference, the FBI negotiator.
Yeah. No, I've read that book. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we don't have any tables. Oh, what should I do then?
Right.
What do I do about you not having any tables? Please solve the issue for me. That would be great.
Is there a point where role playing doesn't become helpful? Like, oh, you've gone too far, or like you just need to get out there now, take the training wheels off,
Is there anywhere that role playing isn't helpful? I mean, me personally, I've just gotten to a point, where it's like, if you're doing it every day, you're like, I'm already in this. What do I need to do? Role playing something new or different, or when the market now has shifted to, but nobody was talking about market crash before. Nobody was talking about interest rates being too high for the last, I don't even know, 15 years or 12 years. God, I don't even know. Nobody's been talking about that. So that's a resurgence, right? So now we can role play that. But yeah, there's a certain point where you just hit cruising altitude and you just do it. You're just executing, you know, you don't,
Yep.
I mean, I guess a sports analogy would be bad because in sports, you keep shooting the free throws, right? No matter
Right.
even if you are Michael Jordan, but for the rest of us mere mortals, yeah, at a certain point, we don't need to shoot free throws anymore.
Nice. Nice. On a day-to-day basis, like, and we've talked about this a lot, but just, to give people an idea of, what happens in the groups, where do the kind of various topics that you guys role play that day actually come from? Is it like, do you have a master plan of what you're trying to teach these people, or is it more like user generated, like I'm having an issue with blank?
So within our curriculum, when people start with us, we definitely have a trajectory that we take them through.
Yeah.
So like I said, we start with intros, we work on discovery, we work on initial simple objections, we work on complicated objections, and then we work on more complicated patterns like doing value statements, soliciting what somebody wants, selling it back to them, and then getting to logical closes. So all of that is like logical sequence. And then when someone's been with us for a decent amount of time, yes, it's either, hey, what are you running into? How do we apply our patterns to it? How do we help you with it? Or if nobody has any other suggestions, me as your trainer, I know that we haven't done this in a long time. Let's go back and practice it again.
Right. Right. Definitely. Okay. So crew that's listening to us live, if you got any questions, like start dropping them in, because we're kind of getting to the end of our prescribed questions here. I want to go back and talk about, maybe a little something that you and I had discussed. You had mentioned that it was easier for you to role play live on stage than it was to just give like a talk. And I thought that was cool. So I don't know, like hit me with your logic there.
Yeah, because I'm so used to the interaction. I'm used to like street magic where it's one to, you're seeing, you're getting the live feedback right now. Is this working? Are we vibing? Are we syncing? Do you get this? Do we not? Right. When I'm on stage and I'm blinded by lights and there's just a massive crowd of people, I have no feedback as to where I'm at. I don't know if this is hitting. I don't know if you're getting this. I don't know. When you see me do the training, Chris, in the big meeting, the webinar,
yeah,
we know, the whole crowd knows, is this person getting it? Is it clicking? Like, is it making a shift for them?
right.
And that really gives me the juice. Not that I don't like speaking. For anybody here who wants to book me for their stage, I love speaking. My point is that I'm much more comfortable, like hand-to-hand combat, where I can see, is this working? Is it not? Do I need to pivot? Do I need to change? And doing a little bit of crowd, entertainment at the same time. Whereas speaking from the stage, man, it's just like, I'm kind of dancing all alone up here on the stage. You know what I mean?
It's one directional. Yeah. And it's not necessarily, it's just not the
There's
same.
no feedback.
I like what you say, the street magic. Your fans are in attendance. So Patricia is saying Dale's coaching's the best. Help me convert more leads. So that's awesome to hear.
Patricia Katiki. Listen, the reward for being an excellent teacher is amazing students like Patricia.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk a little bit just about like specific technology. So Mojo is a plugin or a dialer service that works well with Real Geeks. Is there any of your other favorites that you suggest people use?
I would say that standalone dialers, Mojo would be about the only one. I've personally used it over the years. I've run teams on it. And, in the day and age of declining answer rates and getting flagged and all that other stuff, here's what I would say. I know I'm not going to preach about dialers or what to use or how to use them at this point. But what I would say is, if you can, the important thing to me is that it can record. And so if you don't have a CRM that can record, get something that can make recordings for you and your agents and your ISAs. You absolutely have to have it for ISAs. You need to hear what these people are saying. You need to hear what your salespeople are saying so that you can assist them. And if you're running ISAs, there is nothing better than giving the recording from the ISA to the agent that they set the appointment for, or the lead that they generated for them. Because you hear so much more than anybody can write in notes. You get so much more in terms of context and personality that that really aids the salespeople in being able to convert that lead.
Love that answer. Do you have any insight into, you know, agents using their cell phone to make calls versus using a dialer in terms of answer rates? Or is there, you know, uh,
I don't know
is there anything in there?
not for the answer rates necessarily, because your cell phone can get burned. Any number can get burned if it's being
Yeah.
overused. So what I would say for me personally as a team leader, I always want and require my salespeople to work my leads inside my system, inside my CRM, so
Right.
that it can be recorded, so that it can be tracked, so that they can be coached and trained, and so that we just have clarity into what's going on. When they're operating from their own cell phone, we don't have that kind of clarity. And a lot of times they don't have the ability to record. When we're training people like Zillow Flex or Zillow Premier
Yep.
clients, when usually you get the call when you're in the grocery store or your kid's soccer game, or when you're driving to or from an appointment. That's usually when the call comes in. They have recording already turned on, so you don't have to worry about remembering anything. You can just do what you know you're supposed to do. You can have your conversation, you can do your discovery, you can set your appointment. Now, if you're Flex, you can't do all of that stuff, but you guys know what I mean. You can
Yep.
do your script. You don't have to worry about remembering anything, and it's all recorded right there. So another reason to have that.
Very good. Very good. I think we're getting close to time here, Dale. You got to tell
Cool.
people where they can find you.
Absolutely. So our website is smartsalescoaching.com. And we have a 12-week intensive called the Pipeline Builder. So basically you come with us for 12 weeks. We train you our topics, our techniques, our strategies. We support you Monday through Friday with classes, content, and a once a week accountability meeting where you have a well-trained and empathetic sales manager who basically kicks you in the pants and makes sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. Everybody wants a good kick in the pants, right, Chris?
Hey, you know what? A good coach cannot be substitute.
Right. Yeah, that's where you find us. And you can find tons of content out there on
Definitely.
the internet.
All right. Well, guys, there's going to be lots of links down below. If you're watching this live, then, hopefully we'll go drop some right in the chat. Otherwise, go find Dale on the web. And then if you're watching this or recorded and uploaded, then, just go down to the description. It'll be there. If you like this, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that. Subscribe on Apple, iTunes, and you know what? I always say that iTunes. That's like dating me. I gotta rewire it to Apple Podcasts.
Oh, it is Apple Podcasts. I was like, what's wrong with iTunes, bro? It's that's what it is.
Exactly. The problem is it's outdated now, I guess.
Yeah. Wait, Chris, are all the listeners Real Geeks clients, or do we have non-Real Geeks clients?
It varies, right? So let's talk about the Keeping It Real audience here real fast. So we put it on YouTube and we put it in the Real Geeks Mastermind group. So we definitely have a lot of Real Geeks users that listen to us. And I would be willing to bet that it's probably like 95% of our users. But we get organic users that find us on YouTube, that find us on Apple Podcasts, and just generally out there on the internet.
Because I want to give a totally unsolicited testimonial. So for those who don't know, I've had a Real Geeks website for like 12 years. That's not the reason that Chris is interviewing me. And I'm not saying that because I get anything out of it. Real Geeks is a fantastic website that we've been running for 12 years or so. We use their Real Leads program. It produces lots of commission dollars for us. We love it. It's easy to use. It's fast. It's a great website. And so I'm giving this unsolicited testimonial as a result. And if you do come through us and you end up signing up for Real Geeks website, you get a $200 discount. For new users.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing is like, we love having guys like you around because, we really see Real Geeks as like this hub, and we want to have a lot of other players in the ecosystem. And so we think that, when our users, use your coaching or use, services like Mojo, they are more successful long-term, and they're, happier, stick around longer, all that kind of stuff. So, if ever you're wondering, it's like, wait, hang on, Real Geek seems to be talking to a frenemy or, that kind of thing. It's because we really do believe in the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Excellent. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming. And thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll catch you later.